All right, greetings everyone, and welcome to the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy. My name is Kabbalah. I'm a member of the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy, and I'm a member of the ACUP, the African Continental Unity Party. So today I'm going to be facilitating the discussion today around an important topic, which is freedom or liberation. What do you choose, or what do you fight for? So we know, of course, that Africa has gone through a lot of transitions from being the pyramid builders, from being those who have provided the basic of the world civilization, to becoming those who were then subjects to Western imperialism through slavery and colonialism. Our fathers had to fight for us to be free, for us to be rid of the imperial forces. The question of whether we are totally free from those imperial forces or not, it's a matter that we all know about and probably will delve into in this discussion. However, the question is, do we pursue freedom or do we pursue liberation? Now, I don't want to talk much. I want to invite our King Fanelo Ndovu, who is in South Africa, precisely in Cape Town, to introduce us to the topic. As always, you know, we believe in sharing of ideas. We are 7 of us in this platform. We should be able to go away with input provided by each one of us here so that we can enrich ourselves. In other words, we believe that all of us here have a valuable contribution to make to the building of the knowledge that we need, because as has been said, knowledge is a potential power. The more we know, the better we are to navigate the system and to position ourselves in a space where we successfully move forward towards achieving of our great goals. So thank you very much again. As always, we'll open the platform for contributions, as I said. So King Fanelo, please go ahead. The mic is yours.
Thank you, King. Yes, greetings to all the kings and queens. Let me just test if my audio is coming nice and clear.
Very clear. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yes, it's always a great day and a great time. We always look forward to Wednesdays at 8 in this hour to have these light minds to come and, not just keep the fire burning, because what is it that we want to achieve with this conversation? We want to light the fire. We want to see the continent burn, in the hearts of our sons and daughters, kings and queens that are on the in and
It was bad. If uh,
I
yeah,
may have
so
to change.
King Fanelo, can you hear
Is the
me?
line still? Yeah, I can hear you. Is my line still bad?
Now, I think now we can hear you. Can you try to talk then?
Oh, all right. Is it nice and clear?
Yes, now is
Okay,
now is
all right. Just interject as soon as uh, it glitches again. We'll see. We will nest it. We have a very terrible, gloomy weather over Cape Town. In fact, tomorrow we have a warning that schools will not go in because there's heavy rains and there's wind, and it's causing havoc in the Western Cape. Especially, our people are in the informal settlements, so it's affecting a lot of our movement on the roads and the warmth overnight. But anyway, I hope you're all safe and warm where you are. Let's We are discussing what is it that Africa needs in this hour. Is it liberation or is it freedom? What is the difference in these things we are pursuing? um, so I think the floor is going to be open. We're all going to share our own perception of what is our choice for Africa right now. Are we pursuing liberation or are we pursuing freedom? So I think we are having that discussion tonight. But if we put everything into context, one of the things that the creator gave all men, all 8 billion of us that are alive today on earth, we all were born with a will. you know every human being has a power to choose, choose their own destiny, choose what they want to pursue without any restrictions, without any restraint. That is what sets men apart. That's what sets men apart. But what has happened in creation over time, as we expand, as we populating the earth and build cities and build communities, we then started putting a bit of restrictions to that free will. uh, you know we started creating rules. We started creating we say natural. We've always had natural laws, and then, but over and above the natural laws, we started adding our own laws, our own kind of boxes and limitations to the free will of humanity. And we see that especially when it comes to Africa, because if you look at the world, how it is today, how Europe is, and how Africa is, how Asia is, how Arabs are, you will then find that of all the global people, the most people who are restricted the most are the natives, the African people. It doesn't matter where you look in the world. Africa finds itself with a lot of things that was imposed over her people. One of the things that we all know, reflecting from South African history, is that the time we had your colonizers come and wars were fought, and because of that, there was a lot of with war. What happens with war? War is just simply bullying. You have one person who is using violence to bully someone else to actually do uh, and restrict them from their freedom. So actually, when you are bullying someone, you are actually putting constraints of their pass on their freedom. You know, they have ability to choose, they have a will to choose, but now that you are intimidating, you are inflicting violence, and you are now putting them in a box, in a cage, because now suddenly you are making rules that they did not participate in those rules. It's not their choice. You are making choice for them. So as soon as someone else makes choices for someone else, then a liberation, the freedom of a person, has been interfered with. You've already put a person in a box. There's a cage. It's no difference to putting a bird in the cage. As soon as, once you were a bird, you freely could fly anywhere you want at any time. You could go in any direction. You can go eat all kinds of things that you want to eat. You can choose when you eat, and choose when you fly, and choose when you rest, and choose when you where you want to be. But as soon as someone captures you and puts you in a cage, then you can only act within the confinements of the cage. Now suddenly you don't have a freedom to go and eat whatever you want. Somebody must feed you. Somebody must now make decision about what you eating for breakfast, what you eating for lunch, what you eating for dinner. And then suddenly someone chooses where you are, whether you're going to be in the sun by the window, or you're going to be in a warm place or cold place. You are now forced to submit, in within those confinements. And somebody makes choices, and restricts how far can you fly, because you can fly as far as the cage allows you to fly. So when we look at that, uh, the whole of creation never designed humanity to actually uh, bully another human being. So every single 8 billion of us, as we live on earth, we have sovereignty, we have ability that has been endowed upon us to make our own choice without being intimidated or bullied into somebody else's choice. So when you look at these definitions, uh, liberation versus freedom, so then you will recognize that liberation is actually a transformation process. Is a process through which people push back against these boundaries, against this cage that you are in. The act of breaking down the cage and wall, and getting, setting yourself loose from an oppressive system, from laws that are unjust, from things that put restriction over you, things that infringe over your choices and your free will. So liberation has to do with making the conditions conducive for you to live, to thrive, and to pursue whatever you want to pursue. So that is what it is. Now, sometimes freedom refers to an ability to choose or act without constraint, and usually you can even categorize in different forms. I mean, you can talk of political freedom, which refers to you uh, having an ability and a right to choose your own government, to choose who you must rule over you. We talk of political freedom. You can choose, you can participate in governance. You can choose your own rulers, your political parties. You can actually reflect on personal freedom, ability to make choices about your life, your future, your destiny. Nobody makes choices for you. So we talk about personal freedom. You're not. You can actually think of a culture we used to do in Africa, ukutwala, when you take a young girl and force her in marriage. You know, uh, you are then interrupting a young girl's life. You know, she used to be free to do what she wants, and suddenly a man would come and captures her and take her and cage her in a rondavel somewhere, lock them up, and turn them into a wife, you know, and break her will into submission, and impregnate her and force her to have kids and raise kids, and force her to love this man and be the wife and be a good wife in that situation. So that is kind of like what Europe did over Africa. They came and hijacked all of the Africans out of their free will and space, and then force them to, submit to them and do the will of the Europeans on their own land, on their own continent, with their land, with their resources, even with education, even with language, even with religion, with all of these things. Suddenly, Africans are no longer free to express their culture, their language. Suddenly there are bylaws. You can't slaughter, goats or animals, like you used to, because now we live under new enclosures. The cities, the constitutions, the countries, the border gates, the passports, the IDs. So these things are imposed over Africa. So that means today Africa is not different like a bird that is actually finding itself in the cage, that has to behave within the confinements of the cage, and is no different from a young girl who's been captured and forced into marriage. You know, and now, you know, you, as long as you are operating within that cage, within the restrictions, you are really not free. You are not free, and the thing that you need to set you free is liberation. Liberation is the process, it is the journey, it is the decision and the resolution that we need to change this situation. It will be like that young girl saying, you know what, I need to gather my strength and free myself from this marriage and make my own choices and be free. And it will be like a bird saying, you know what, I'm tired of living in this cage. I really want a ability to freedom to fly wherever I want, to eat whenever I want, to eat my own kind of food that I choose, and not be forced to buy this one or be forced into this system that I didn't choose. I did not choose the system. So when we're looking at it from all of those points, you then realize that Africa has never ever ever been free. Africa has never ever been free. The last time Africa was free is when Africa was free to speak its own language, was free and has sovereignty over its culture, had sovereignty over its waters, its mountain, its resources, made choices for their own destiny. That was the time Africa was free to do as they want, as they will. But as soon as there was somebody else who imposed their own things over Africa, then the freedom of Africa was taken away. And now Africa is caged. It's like a bird that lives in the cage that has so much incredible potential but cannot exercise its potential. simply because of the restrictions that it, every time it wants to fly, it hits the cage. Every time it wants to eat something different, there's nothing in that cage except this kind of brand of food that has been put before it. It has no choice. It has to drink that water. It has to eat that. It's restricted. Now, then the bird, just like that bird, or just like that young girl who's captured, Africa today, what they need is liberation. Is to recognize that where the spaces we are operating in is abnormal. It's abnormal that you live in a continent that you didn't name the mountains, you didn't name the cities. It's abnormal that you are submitting to laws you didn't write. It's abnormal that you are buying brands, uh, restrictions and regulations that tell you when you can fish, where you can hunt, what you can eat, what you can't do. It's abnormal that foreigners are deciding those things over you. That's abnormal. It's abnormal for a people to change their language, to change their clothing, to change and submit to another foreign people who come and dictate, and define who you are, and even change your name. You're no longer Mfanelo, you are Surprise. You can't wear those clothes anymore. You now have to wear these Christian clothes, a Christian name. You now have to go to school. You can't be taught by your own grandparents or your father or your mother. You now must have someone else who must come and teach you. Oh, by the way, now you have to learn a culture and a history from a foreign land, from a foreign language. And now you must go and serve the masters and work and be, you don't have a freedom what you want to do with your life. You can now only be a police, and if you're a police, you are there to protect the interests of the occupiers, or a soldier. You are there to protect the interest of you operate within these rules of the foreigners. If you are a lawyer, you act within the parameters of the foreigners. If you're a judge, you are judging according to the rules of the foreigners. Whatever you are now, you're a doctor, you are constrained to issue prescriptions of foreigners. Their science, their things, even media. You didn't choose these, entertainment and stories, Hollywood, but you are forced to now because, someone else controls all the media companies. So they now tell you their own agenda. They tell you now what you should like. You should like Coke now, isn't it? You should now move on and love McDonald's. They bombard you with the information on your face. Whether you're watching movies, whether you're watching story, it's their language, it's their culture. You are bombarded with all kinds of things that you did not choose. So what is it that Africa needs in this hour? Is it freedom or is it liberation? It is clear as daylight that Africa, the first thing it needs is liberation. We are not free as long as we are told to submit to rules we did not draft. As long as we are learning history we do not choose. There's nothing wrong if I choose. If I choose I want to be a carpenter and it's my choice, and I go to China and learn that carpentry on my own will, it's a different matter. It's another matter when I'm not given a choice. All I'm told is that I need to be a carpenter to serve Europeans so that I can eat and have bread and have food, and I'm confined to this space. And here, the limitation of your shack or your RDP house. These days you have these small enclosures, and they give you these title deeds, in this 5 meter by 10 meter site, and tell you that's all the land you have. Whereas when you go outside of your enclosure, then there's acres and acres of game farms and game and farming lands, thousands and thousands of hectares, owned by foreigners. Now that's abnormal. Those things are abnormal in Africa. It's abnormal in Africa that you have minerals, your own gold, you do not benefit from them whatsoever because someone else comes and take without paying a full price for it and extract value out of you and use you for cheap labor and then benefit and create wealth out of your own gold and then print money to pay you for digging it. It's abnormal. So what we see today in this generation, in this hour, is what we need is free, is liberation. So what Africa needs right now as we speak is liberation. We need to remove this abnormality. It's abnormal because if you go to the Arab world, the Arabs there are on top of the food chain. They are all enjoying the fruits of their natural resources and they're on top of the food chain. Everybody else who's there as a foreigner is serving the citizens in the Arab world. If you go to Europe, it's the same thing. The European citizens are on top of the food chain. Anyone else who's a foreigner comes in there and humbles himself and serves, and and live in peace with them. But in Africa, it's abnormal when Africans are actually serving foreigners. It has not changed even in this day. Today, as we speak, right this minute, today, as we speak, we are controlled by a capital that we did not choose. Somebody else imposed a banking system. Somebody else imposed currency. Somebody else imposed a system on us. We didn't create our own currency. Did we create our own rand? Did we create? Who has created his own currency? Who's printed his own money, his own currency? Who's defined terms that I only accept? This is my reserve currency. It's not been imposed on me by a foreign territory, or person. So those are the challenges that we have to think about when we are questioning: do we truly have freedom in Africa, or are we really in need of liberation? Do we need to break the cages, the laws, and the abnormality that we see and find ourselves? So I think for the purposes of this discussion, we need to pause and ponder on this thing and say, what does it take to tell all the 2 billion, because whether now you are on the continent of Africa or whether now you are in Europe, even in Europe, you are restricted because as an African in Europe, even if you're a doctor, you are not treated as the doctors of that territory. You are still undermined in many ways and restricted by laws and rules and preferences that treat European as supremacy, as people who are more important than you as an African. So even when you look at salaries scales, even to this day, if you're an African, you are paid the lowest rate. Whether you are engineer for engineer, you might even be highly qualified than your European counterpart. Even your minimum wages, you can see in South Africa we talk of 4,000 rand, but it's only applicable to the natives and to Africans, who are the true sons and heirs of this land. But the foreigners are enjoying. No foreigner is paid at especially European foreigners. We're talking when we talk foreigners as Africans, we talk about Europe, we talk about Arabs, we talk about Asians. We're not referring to Africans, whether they're in diaspora or whether they are across this continent. So Africans are Africans, but Africans as a collective, they are undermined everywhere they are. So they don't really have true freedom. Even if you live in America, you are not free. you are constrained to restrictions about the quality of a suburb or township you are allowed to live in, the kind of finance access to capital you can have for your house or for your car. You are restricted by interests, by unfair systems. that undermines you, even priorities of jobs. You can't be the president if you're an African. You can't be in these roles and positions. But the opposite is true on the continent. On the continent, when you're a European, you come here in Africa, you are treated as superior. But if you're an African, you are undermined. So I think the reality and the sober truth that we need to face today is the fact that Africa needs liberation. Africa has never been free. Africa has never been allowed to choose their own things. We have never been done. We are in a cage as it is. So the first step is to break down this cage, is to break down the walls and the restrictions and redefine who we are and pursue our own things. And there's never been an age and time like today. Today is the most urgent time for Africa to do something that is different. So I'm going to pause at that. Hopefully, the discussion send you all over the place to trigger and activate a fire that should burn in each one of us' heart, so that we make a decision. The reason we talk about these things is so that we not walk away from here and do nothing. We are doing this intentionally so that we ignite your hearts and set it ablaze, so that that fire must not stop. From here on, it must just consume from Cairo, uh, from Dakar to Djibouti, and that's what it is. It must go across the seas into diaspora bases. If you're an African in Atlanta, you need not to be satisfied with the cages that you've been put in. If you're an African in Australia, do not be satisfied with the cage that you've been put in. In Japan, in China, across these continents and across the Caribbeans, the South Americas, the North Americas, you must not settle for the cage that you've been put in and defined by. Son and daughter of this continent, you need to shake yourself free. You need to shake yourself free from that cage and shake yourself free from those shackles. Uh, Shake yourself free from that yoke that oppresses you. We do not have to surrender. We do not have to be at peace about it. And it's not time for peace. It's time for liberation. And I'm going to park it at that. Over to you, King Kabbalah.
Thank you very much, King Fanelo. This has been very, very wonderful and powerful presentation at the same time. Wow. It is time to break the cage, to get free. You see, it's time to stop being comfortable within the cage, within the boundaries set up for us by the oppressors. So definitely it's time to break the cage and define our own parameters. And that is the essence of liberation. Thank you very much for your powerful presentation. I'm going to pass the mic on to the to people in the audience to get the feedback, contribution, comments from everyone to even enrich the conversation better. So on, I'm gonna start with the King Kov. Yeah, King Kov. In case you are able to talk, please tell us what is your take on this topic, and what do you think is the most important part of this presentation. Over to you, please.
Thank you, King. I've just imbibed the knowledge shared by King Fernando, and I also share the knowledge he shared that I think when you draw the scale of preference, liberation should be the number one for us to take and work on because Africa is under bondage due to colonialism and new colonialism. And we have been under some suppression, and that chain, the shackles. We need to break those shackles that are pulling us back and work on a new dawn of struggle where we can actually, if you don't break that chain, that shackle that is drawn way back, you can't enjoy the freedom as uh, King Finalo said that if you are in a cage, you cannot have access to freedom because you are restricted to free movement and even how to function to allow your faculties to to function well. So for us to regenerate our faculties so that our indigenous knowledge system we can harness it and the gift of nature that God has given to Africa and the human capital that we have, that some are in the diaspora, some are within the continent. We need to work a system that will liberate our mental faculties and pursue an agenda that could actually make us independent and we could be on our own. That's self-reliance. Africa needs to be self-reliant. But if we don't work out things to liberate ourselves from mental slavery, because we have thrown what is precious for we to the dogs, and they are thinking what is for us. They are the right people to own it. You could see the way they stole us during the transatlantic slave trade and all those things. It's part of suppression. Is some of the shackles they put on us, the divisiveness tactics that they employ, so that through that you could see it's through that kind of suppression give them the opportunity for them to divide us into countries all over. If you trace African history, we were all together one. There were no boundaries, there were no borders, but because they want to restrict us and have control on our faculties. So that's the tactic they've played on our intelligence, taking all our values away. But at this 21st century, I think this generation have realized uh, the wicked game they played on us, and we have to fight and liberate ourselves from that bondage, that shackles. We have to break it, and before we can break it, only is through unity for us. Unity for us to fight for liberation. So, in a nutshell, I want to imbibe the knowledge shared by King Fanaro that we have to come out of the cage and think out of the box, because so doing, uh, we have to turn the system of global trade, and that's where we need to train a whole lot of scientists, technologists, engineers, and without so doing, we'll still rely on those enemies, the imperialists, who always think we should just be producers of primary products, for them to refine or whatever. They are the best people to pursue industrialization. But I want to assure we here at this forum that Africa is endowed with a whole lot of human capital and natural resources. And when we talk of human capital, we have it. And when we turn the system around, and now we don't supply any raw materials to Europe, America, and everything is done here. We industrialize ourselves and we produce everything here, the byproducts, or we make use of them here industrially. You see where the so-called neo-colonialists or the Eurocentric group of people, you see how they will smell pepper because we will not supply raw materials to them again. We will do our own thing, and that can inter-independence within the African states, the inter-trade, having our own banks, central banks, and the connectivity of transportation. When we pursue all, it's part of liberating ourselves from that kind of suppression. When you study the international trade now, you could see that Africa is just working for those kind of group of people, wicked people, who always think we should worship them and bow our head down for them, whatever they tell us. And one thing I want to alert why Africa should be serious about producing our own goods is, now they are using GMO system of agricultural products, and it's dangerous for us because the agenda is to make us
Well, King Cover, I think we lost you there. I don't know if your signal is interrupted or something. Okay. I believe that King Cover is experiencing some challenge with the signal, but I think we have heard him in nutshell. He pointed out to the fact that we need to liberate ourselves from the mental shackle, and through unity we'll be able to achieve that liberation, which is perfectly true. So I'm gonna go to Queen Busisiwe. I don't know if you have additional point to make on what King Kove made as as a feedback to the presentation.
Good evening, kings and queens. I today I am going to listen and learn. Thank you, King.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much, Queen. Thank you very much indeed. So I have Sebastian. I don't know if you are able to talk. Do you have any input at this point?
Okay, good evening, kings and queens.
Good evening.
It's been a long road. I joined earlier and I kept following, and it was interesting. But I wanted to make a suggestion. I do that first before I make my comments. I don't know if it is possible for the administrators to always write clearly the topic for discussion on the page. I don't know if it is supposed to be called page or on the group, so that we can prepare ahead of time. So that when we come in, we are following. That will do us a lot of good also. But my stake is on liberation, and what I want to share is more of questioning for us to think together, that when we say liberation, what exactly do we want to liberate ourselves, our continent from. That has to be clear in our minds, should be clear in our hearts that this and this is what we want to change. Liberation is about fighting yourself out of a system or a condition that you don't want. An undesired condition is what you are against, is what you want to speak out to get change and reforms from. Now, if we think about what exactly we want to liberate, my other questions I would like to pose or add is that if we know certainly that this is what we need to change in the system, is it reforms that we need or revolution that we need? And I love that people of Kenya, they are Kenyans here, hats out for you. The Red Cap salutes for the efforts you are making in your country. If it is change we need, is it through revolution or reforms? Mind us that we have been warned by our forefathers and forebearers that it is not about keeping the old system that has kept us where we are. We need to break that old system out and rebuild and reconstruct the one we need. That is liberation. Liberation is breaking from the old system that makes you enslaved. French people will say esclavage, or whatever they say. But that system that makes you like that, you must break out of that first so that you can be called a liberated person. You understand? Now, why do I say this? When we look at our current problem, typically, it is one that has to do with the capitalist establishment of our economies and our world. It has to do with the new colonialism era, which is directly linked to the capitalist model. Okay, so if we analyze it in that form, politically, where are we standing? How are we influenced politically? If it is for us to break the capitalist orientation of our societies, then we should start forming those forces that looks at organizing the means of production again. We should start looking at, there should be a paradigm shift from what exactly we need now, because we have long since diagnosed our problems since the days of slavery to colonialism and to now new colonialism. We have long ago diagnosed our problems as Africans and as Black people. We have diagnosed that, and now it is for us to take solutions. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. But also, just not for emphasis sake, I think it is important that the topics are always kept on the page for us to read ahead of time to help all of us. Thank you so much, kings and queens. Love.
Thank you very much, King Sebastian. You've wonderfully pointed out. Yes, your suggestion is well noted, and indeed, we did post the pamphlet with all the topics and the dates on the Telegram. I believe that you have missed it, and also on this conversation, this room anyway. When you look on the title on top, I don't know if it's visible on your side. You will see the title of the discussion today, which is Freedom or Liberation. And we also always post on various WhatsApp platform to like 2 hours before the discussion every Wednesday to remind people. But we'll make it more. We'll try to make it more, visible by putting it exactly on this platform and other platform as well, most intensively, to make sure that everyone has a chance to notice. But thank you very much for your input. We're still on the topic. The presentation has been wonderfully made by King Fanelo. We just need to get addition from all of us as to what do we go for. But so far, everyone believes that liberation is the way to go, of course, and that is true. There's a popular saying that goes as you can set free a slave, or in other words, you can take a slave out of slavery, but it's only a slave who needs to take slavery out of himself. You see, people can declare to you that you are free today. You are free, but you just need to obey the law. But it's up to you to decide what is the level, what are the parameters of that freedom. If you decided to go out of those boundaries set up by for you, then you definitely embark into what we call liberation. We're still getting feedback. Let me go to Agnes Chibuma. Sorry, I don't know if you're able to talk. Please unmute yourself. Tell us what is the important takeaway from you in terms of all that we have discussed today. Okay, I think Agnes Chibuma maybe is not able to
Yeah,
talk.
I want
Yeah,
to
please.
talk. There was a bad network with me. I had a meeting, Zoom meeting with some comrades in Kenya, and it's making like they are not, according to the communication I had from them, like they are not aware of African Continental Unity Party and how we are coming together to create a power base for African politicking. So I think I had a whole lot of brainstorm meeting with them, and what I just want to suggest is I think we need to deepen our education and organization ability for the 54 countries or 55 countries that compose the continent. That's we have to deepen the publicity and education for every country. By now, I think every country on the continent supposed to get a steering committee of African Continental Unity Party, so that they get awareness about the Free-Minded Academy, because it's a knowledge-based academy where we can empower ourselves with knowledgeful ideas. So I think King Kabbalah and Co, you are nearer to Kenya than we in Ghana here. So maybe I only have to link you with somebody has to play a lead role in organization. So I think the youth there are eager for African liberation. So I will do that, and maybe luckily my chair of Ghana too is here, and I'll link my chair to so that maybe East Africa, and I don't know how we are penetrating the northern side of Africa. I think West Africa, we are doing our best to designate agenda. So
All
this
right.
is my humble information I want to share with kings and queens here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, King Kove. Please, please kindly share the contacts with me, and eventually we'll be in touch to facilitate communications. So thank you for your wonderful work, King Ken, our chairperson. Please, I don't know if you, I'm sure you joined late, but from what you have heard, we're talking today about the freedom or liberation. What choice do you think is best for Africa? I don't know if King Ken is able to talk. Otherwise, I will go to um, 57262. Sorry, that's what I can read here. 57262. Okay. Is there anybody else that has a addition, comment, or feedback to bring on the table? King Arnold, please go ahead. The mic is yours.
Good evening from South Africa. I want to say thank you for a good presentation from King Fanelo. The topic that we discussed is so much important. When you speak about liberation,
Kindly amplify your voice, please.
oh, you can't hear me? Oh,
Yeah,
can you hear
you
me now?
amplify.
Yes, when you speak about, you mention liberation. Liberation is awareness, individual awareness, but awareness to what? In relation to spirituality. That is the solution of that is the whole solution of us in Africa. I was making a little bit of research, I'm looking and then reading about all our African leaders. Majority of them, they were British American educated. And then immediately being educated like that, you go and then you want to challenge the people who you got education from them. They're gonna make fun out of you. For an example, let's say for an example, one of our, the founding member of African National Congress, Chief Lutuli, when he wrote a letter pleaded to King George, I think he said, "Oh, King, remember that we are made in the image of God. We are human beings. Please consider us." Now, firstly, he spoke the language of the oppressor, number one, and he approached the king with a so-called protocol observe. And you know what? It doesn't matter. That king did not even recognize Chief Lutuli. But when it comes to spirituality, it's totally different thing. It will be a totally ball game. For an example, we are being taught that if you make an oath, you go and swear using God's name. I swear that I'll speak the truth, only the truth. But when it comes to spirituality, we say, you swear using your mother. Now, mother is got two meanings. It can be mother that Mother Earth, or mother that your own mother. You see, in spirituality, if we say you swear using your mother, it means that is where you got where you were nurtured. I'm not so well versed. I'm not well funded. Nurtured, I think, is NURTURED, right? So immediately now it's totally different game. If you define an enemy, you're not gonna be coming with so much complication and say the one who's no. In spirituality, we say anyone who interrupt or who is interfering between us and the land. Why the land? Land is part of nature. That anyone who does that is the enemy. You see, it's a totally ball game. We don't play games with the people, because what they want to do, they will give you all the legal terms, their education, and then from there, when you stand in front of them, you have to be so legally correct, and they'll play games. By the way, Mr. Such and Such, what do you mean that you are a human being? Now you have to define human being according to their definition. No, we don't play that game. We are spiritual people, and then that is the only thing that will change the whole play game. When we look we look in nature, we are able to define who we are in relation to nature, not who we are in relation to Europeans. No, we don't play that game. I think that topic today is so much important that let's go back to spirituality. That is the only thing that will make sense. And then remember, immediately we go that route, it's going to harmonize, it's going to make sense, it's part of who we are. Right? We won't be able to strive so much and then crack our heads. How do we define everything is in nature? We'll sort out the food problem. Like, for an example, we're not going to be debating, oh, you took the land from us by force. No, we say, as far as we know, no one was born and he brought the land. No one. All of us, we came with nothing. We're going back with nothing. Issue of water. No one has created water. We found water here and we're going to leave water, and everyone must have an access of water. You see, it is spirituality. It makes more sense and it's straightforward, and it is directly to the point. We won't be playing these games that they are doing. That's what they did to all of our kings. They took them to Britain. They study Parliament and British Parliament, American Parliament, and then after that they start playing games. Oh, by the way, don't forget there's an investor. Don't forget there's an investor. So be careful when you put. So with us, we don't play that game, right? We say all these trees, all herbs, all everything that you see here are meant for the healing and for the food of humanity. Straightforward. We're not going to be debating about other things. That is my take. I say that liberation is awareness, firstly, as individually, spiritually speaking. I might not be very articulate, but one thing that I know is that whatever that I'm talking about, especially spirituality, it harmonizes, it connects, it makes sense. Then some of the things, you might not understand, but as time goes, you'll realize that this is where slavery, colonization, imperialism, where it was an interference or interruption to our spirituality. Let me stop here. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arnold. You always inspire us with wisdom every time you talk. So you have pointed to the spiritual dimension of liberation. You mentioned that liberation is awareness of who we are, and for that to be effective, we need to approach that, with the spirituality. Definitely. That's great. That's great. So we're still having a couple of minutes. Anybody else that has something to add on the topic today? Something that you want us to keep in mind as a takeaway on this topic between freedom and liberation? What should we choose? But it has been clearly stated that freedom is a limited kind of freedom. Liberation is a complete, as we just heard again, complete awareness, of who you are and how you are supposed to exercise yourself. And I don't know if there's anyone who has something to add on. Otherwise, it was a very powerful. Over to you, please. Go ahead.
Peace and blessing to all of us. And yeah, so all that has been said are on point. But what I want to start thinking about or building is the actionable things. For instance, all these guys come into town, pay themselves well, stealing as much as they can. On top of that, they pay themselves better than those of us who even know the environment better than them. We need to start thinking about how to resolve that issue. One of the ways of doing that is legislation. What it means also is that we have to have a power to legislate or influence the legislature to legislate. So, what are the plans? What are the green, what do you call it, blueprint that we need to put together? Those are some of the things I'm thinking that there must be a blueprint subcommittee or something that are putting all these things together to say, look, we'll start here, we'll start there, we'll continue from here, we'll continue from, because everything that has been said has been said. We know it, we continue to think about it, think through it, but we need to take that first step. That first step, like the Gen Z did in Kenya. It went through a certain transformational process. And for Africa, us, go through our spirituality realm and all the rest of it, we need to put one foot in front and move the other. If we don't, we may chat, we may talk about all these revolutionary stuff, wonderful, but we need to put the foot forward and move on it. So action is what I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Yes, action, action, action. Effectively, that is true. It is time for action, and the actions is what gonna put our power, I mean, our knowledge in motion, so that we can begin to see the results of those knowledge. It's mainly people say that knowledge is power, which is not true, really. Knowledge is only potential power. Knowledge becomes a power only when you begin to take actions on that knowledge. So we need more actions now to make this whole agenda effective. And the best way to act is to be organized. The little organizations or the little organized we are, the less things we get done. The more organized we become, the more we get things done. And with no organization, we cannot get things done. So we'll continue to stress this to our people so that they can realize that there's no more individual solution today, especially when we talk about the liberation of Africa. This is not a Congolese agenda. This cannot be a Ghanaian agenda. This cannot be a South African agenda, because these small countries, these small enclosures, cages, individually by themselves cannot compete and win or overcome the force of imperialism that is still keeping Africa in the conditions where our liberation is wanting, is found wanting. So we need to come together to be organized, right, across the continents and in the diaspora, so that we can be able to effectively work to destroy the power of imperialism and achieve our liberation. In other words, you alone, you are not able to destroy, to break the cage. You alone, as a Congo, as a Guinea, as Kenya, you cannot break the cage. We need to be able to understand that this cage is now an international matter. You know, imperialism has been globalized. You cannot fight it with local force or with ethnic tendency, believing that you'll be able to win over imperialism and liberate yourself. It doesn't work. It is time that we consolidate our efforts, we globalize better our efforts to win over the forces of imperialism. So I'm gonna send the mic over back to King Fanelo, who has presented the topic today, to close or to maybe respond, touch base on, touch a bit on what other people have said and try to close, not try, but effectively close the conference today. But I just want to go through if there's anybody else who still have something to say before we go over to King Fanelo. Is there anyone who wants to comment or to say something? Well, I guess not. So, King Fanelo, over to you, please. Your final comments on all the suggestions and comments that you've heard, and what do you want us to go home with today? Over to you, please.
Thank you so much. All the contribution from all the kings that spoke and the queens that commented. So the truth is that we are better together, and we are more powerful together. So with all the ideas put on the plate, and the next thing that we need to do is to action these things that we put on the table. So I like to consolidate and say, yes, we all agree we need liberation, even though we need to define that liberation, what it is. But what is clear and what we put as a first step is that the enclosures that have defined us, they need to go. That means let's restore the land. Let's restore our asset. Let the control and the 100% sovereignty of our land and our natural resources be handed back to the original natives of each land and country. And I think that is the first step to achieve that, because that is what we want. To achieve that, we have to organize ourselves and stand together. If we are organized together, we are unstoppable. And I heard the suggestion that ACUP is the solution, is the plan. It is a liberation movement that wants to unite, organize us, all the various political organizations, all various institutions and peoples and groups and nationalities must come together. As long as we are united by a birthplace, we all are born on this continent or descend from it. Melanin unites us because everybody who wears it, we know they are descendants of Africa, whether they went into Europe to look for, as a brain drain, or whether they went there as a slave trade. But the reality is Africa, as a people of Africa, need to organize ourselves and speak with one voice. And if we speak with one voice, we will restore our land back to us, so that we have control and sovereignty of our natural land. It's good for our spirituality. It's good for our economy. It's good for our food. It's good for our health. Nobody must desecrate our forests, our mountains, our sacred places, our rivers. It must be us, the owners of the land. And that is it. It doesn't get better than that. And a choosing ability for us to live peacefully and eat of our land, eat of our fish and our antelopes, enjoy our elephants and our lions without restrictions, and so it takes us to organize ourselves for that agenda. And yes, we like the fact that we are having this conversation, and so we thank you so much for all of these contributions. So when we go from here, let's keep this conversation, and let's start with us and our families and our colleagues and our friends, until Africa has its land back, its natural resources back, sovereignty, and choosing what we want to do with our gold, what we want to do with our diamonds ourselves. Set our own prices if we want to sell them. Keep them if we want to keep them. process them if we want to process them for ourselves first, because we don't think we should always be building things for people. We shouldn't be producing our first grade coffee, cocoa for foreign people. We should actually enjoy it with our families first, and then the abundance that we decide to share with the world. Unlike right now with this capitalist economy, which dictates that you give the best to the foreigners, and then while you eat the crumbs. So those are the things that we need to correct. And I like the notion that we realize that every one of African liberators, most of them have went and studied, whether in America or in the West. So the issue now begs, we need to ask ourselves, why do we always have to go learn these foreign laws? Why don't we have our own and restore our own native and natural laws? Why don't we prioritize that? Why don't we tell our own histories, record our own history, teach our own medicine, our own farming, our own way of doing things, and prioritize that first before we prioritize foreigner technology and things? And yes, let's develop our own. Let's just not go by. Let's actually build our own. We've got the brains, we've got intellectual capacity right now. We've got doctors, we've got engineers, we've got researchers, we've got scientists, we've got in all kinds of industry. We've got that. We've got the numbers, we've got the buying power. So actually, liberation for Africa today, it's actually, it's never been so possible as it is now. It was more difficult in the days of Kwame Nkrumah, because knowledge and information and communication was restricted. Even travel, perhaps, was restriction. Today, there is an abundance of technology. We are talking across many nations as we speak now, and we're sharing knowledge, we're sharing ideas. Even that, we are restoring and educating ourselves with our back to natural history, and we are able to share and talk. We are able to collaborate better now because we have learned so much. So all we need to do now is pull that knowledge together. And for Africans, we love keeping multi-generational ideas. It came with Europe, the idea of taking your parents and your grandparents and locking them up in an old age home and separate them from the younger generation. In African cultures and families, all generations used to live in the same estate, so that the knowledge and the wealth of this family, the trades, the expertise is passed down to the new generation. That's how African families are. We were not meant to be separated and dispersed. We were meant to work together, everybody on family land, farming, food production. We build our own homes, we produce our own food, we make our own clothes, we make our own tools. And that was the art. That's where we need to go back. So I think the big issue and takeaway today is that it's not yet Uhuru. We need to liberate ourselves, and the only way we can do it is to recognize that we cannot fight against each other. We cannot keep dividing each other by the borders that we didn't put for over Africa. Africa did not have borders. The borders were imposed. Africa did not have the names we have, even ourselves. These things were imposed. So therefore, let's free ourselves from these things and write our own. And that is freedom. That is true freedom. And that's what we want to pursue. And so yes, let's spread the word. Let's invite people. Let's have think tanks across the continent in all 54 nations, but not only limited to there. Let's take it to diaspora basis. Where we have sons and daughters of this continent, let's have the conversations in all 195 recognized nations globally. Everywhere where we've got sons and daughters, we need to protect their rights. We need to and force their liberation, we need to have them recognized as equals in those territories, so that they are treated fairly, with dignity and honor that we all deserve. All humanity deserves that. We are one people, we are equal, and we all, as the king said, nobody came with land, nobody came with water, nobody came with gold, nobody came with nothing. So actually, all of us, 8 billion of us, are equal shareholders of the earth. So we have a right over the earth and over its fish, its seas, and its birds, its mountains, its resources, for us to live and thrive. So we need to share. We need to work together and collaborate in that way. So thank you so much. Let's spread that word. Before this year is over, let's establish think tanks in all 100 jurisdictions. So I am appealing and I'm asking everyone here who's got a network, who's got contacts, let's invite, let's bring people across and say, come, let's organize ourselves so that we see every nation represented before December 2024. We want to have teams in all 195 jurisdictions. So let's work together to make it happen. Thank you, kings and queens. Have a lovely evening. Thank you.